Welcome music friends. Today we're going to have a tutorial and I'm going to show you how to use Reaper alongside of MOBIUS Looper and how you can do live looping on a little budget. Now we're going to presume initially that most people will have many of the pieces and components that they will need to do live looping. Just in case you may not have all of the components to do this, I'm going to give you a list of a couple purchases that you need to make ahead of time to be able to do this. The first thing that you're going to want to buy is a microphone. And you can find yourself a microphone on Amazon. Now, Amazon has many options available, but I figure it's probably best to start with something simple. This here is the WEYMIC WM57, which is a $16 basically knockoff of an SM57. And what you currently are hearing right now is the WM57 going through the actual recording interface that I'm about to show you. Additionally, you're going to want to find yourself a decent pair of headphones. And for that pair of headphones, I recommend these. They are $36 from ODIO. It's spelled ODIO. But they are wired and they have a large 1/4 inch jack and a 1/8 of an inch jack as well that you can use. And surprisingly enough, if you're in a pinch, you can tandem these to another pair of headphones so that you can basically run two people listening at the same time. These are affordable. They sound relatively decent. They're very clear sounding. And then the next thing that you're going to want to find is an audio interface. I am currently using this one, the Euphoria UMC 204 HD. It's got two inputs. It sounds fairly decent. It's a relatively low noise floor. And it runs about $72.68. So after taxes, roughly around $75 or $80, somewhere around there. Relatively affordable. You're going to need some instruments like a guitar or a bass, a keyboard or synth or your voice, whichever you would like to do, or drum machines, depending on what you would like to do, and the corresponding instrument cables to be connecting them. Your choice of mic or cables or instruments is entirely up to you. For the purpose of this tutorial, we're going to focus just the interface with a microphone and a guitar and instrument cables to keep it simple. I do not recommend using a condenser microphone. I recommend using a dynamic microphone. Condenser microphones in live applications are very prone to feedback. Next, you're going to want to find yourself a USB keyboard. Now, for the USB keyboard, I recommend something that's like this, once again from Amazon, for $9.49, relatively cheap. Now, what we're going to do preliminarily for this is we're going to take this keyboard and we're going to be ripping off most of the keys. So what you're going to want to do is go through that keyboard and rip off all the keys except for the ones that you see here. And you're going to pop off the other keys with a screwdriver. I find that if you put the screwdriver in between the rows of keys, you can just shear them off in a long pass. I used tape to mark the keys that I wanted to keep, and then I popped off the rest. Now that that is done, we're going to do the install of MOBIUS Looper from Circular Labs. Down in the comments section, I will have the URL link to go to MOBIUS from Circular Labs. The website will look like this, and that is the circularlabs.com/download2/download.html. There is a MOBIUS 3 out there, but currently it only works up to 6 channels. And once you get it installed, you can open the standalone program before installing Reaper, and this is what it's going to look like. You're going to see an interface that looks similar to this. Now there's going to be some additional buttons on the screen, but I'm going to show you how we're going to get rid of those. In the upper left, we're going to click Configuration, Display Components. Now there's going to be a bunch of things inside these windows over here on the right hand side that you don't want. And so you're going to want to move them all over to the other side so that you don't have to see them. And the easiest way to do this is the double arrow pointing to the left. You click on that, and that moves everything from this list over to here. And the same thing here, everything from list to list over to here. Double click, hit OK. And now once that's done, You should have those empty, and you come back and your screen will look as follows. Now you want to set up your tracks using configuration track setups. Configuration track setups, it's the second one in the drop down. And now you will see this screen. Now for ours, what we're going to do is you will have a default setting that's on here, and that's the one you can change. Currently I set it up to this so you can watch me go through the process of it. Now what you want to do is for each of the tracks, track 1, you want to name it, and in this case I named mine DRM for drum. And you want the plug-in output port to be 1, plug-in input port to be 1, and the audio output port to be 1. And the audio input port can be 1 as well, and that's fine. For your other sync source, track sync unit, preset, and group, you just leave those alone. You don't need to mess with those. So now we click to track 2, and I call my track 2 perk for percussion. And we want plug-in output port 2. And for each of the tracks on here, if you don't want to name them, you don't have to. But you go through, track 3 gets assigned output port 3. Track 4, output 4. Track 5, output 5. Track 6, output 6. Track 7, output 7. Track 8, output 8. And then for each of them, I'm going to just do my quick naming scheme on them. This is for my rhythm section. Usually my bass track goes here, so bass. I will have an accompaniment. Accompaniment 1. Accompaniment 2. Accompaniment 2. Synths or vocals. And synth or vocal 2. And now that those are set up on here, you hit synchronization and double check that your settings for synchronization are track, loop, beat. 4, start point, restart loop, send stop, start continue clocks, none, 20, 300, and then out sync manual start is checked. And then on the other tab, don't change a thing. Hit OK. Now we're going to configure the keyboard so that you can use that as the looping keyboard. So now you already have your keys shredded off of your keyboard, which I'm sure you made a spectacular mess doing. You're going to go to Configuration, Keyboard Control. There's going to be items in here in this list. We're going to go ahead and whatever the items are in here, you delete them all. It's tedious, one at a time. This is tedious, but we're going to do it. And if you get lost on any of these things and you aren't fully sure, there is going to be a link to the PDF of how to do all of this so that you can walk through the steps picture by picture. Now that that's clear, now we're going to go through, and on each one of these on here, we need to set our record functions. So we go to New, located in the lower left, Functions, Record. Now we want the scope to be track 1, capture, and we set the Z key. And now we hit update. Now next we want to do New, Record, track 2, capture, the B key, update. New, track, record, track 3, the period key, which is also that angle bracket to the right. Update. New, track 4, the left arrow key. Make sure that after it messes that up on there, that you go back and set it to track 4. and then update. So now you have 4 tracks. New, track 5, F1. Update. New, track 6, F5. Update. New, record, track 7, F9. Update. New, track 8, insert. Update. New, we're going to do it the overdub function. Overdub, scope, global. And we want that to be the asterisk or multiply. And that will only overdub to the track that you see highlighted pink. Like here, if you have this one highlighted pink, that's the track that's going to overdub. It only works on the current selected one. Update. Let's try that again. Update. Delete. New. Track global. New. There we go. Now we delete that excess one. Just to make sure. Sometimes it's a little bit glitchy. And the last thing that we want to do is global. Go up to global pause. Global. This capture. Delete. Go new. Function global pause. Delete. Or decimal. Okay, so now that that's set, we need to change our window focus on each of the tracks. And this is also a tedious one. We're going to scroll down till we see track in functions. Okay, track 1. So now we need to hit new, track 1, and press your key, your Z key, update. Go to track number 2, click on that, click new, change that one to track 2. Update. Track 4. Right, track 3. New. Go down to tracks. Track 3. Update. Track 4. New. Tracks. Track 4. Update. Track 5. New. Track 5, update. Track 6, new. Track 6, update. Track 7, new. Track 7, update. Track 8, new. Track 8, update. Now for each of these, you'll notice there is a record and a track 1, record, track 2, record, track 3, record, track 4, and so on. What this does is when you switch windows and you are doing the recording with this, it changes the focus so that it jumps from each one to the next. Now we're going to hit OK. And next thing we're going to go to is the configuration, global parameters, and under advanced, where you see on here, you want to make sure that save project layers is checked. Don't change anything else. Now in these global parameters, you want to set your limits. Double check that your limits, you have 8, 2, 6, and 8. That's the setting that you want to have on here. And then for miscellaneous functions and modes, just hit OK. Next thing, you're going to go to Configuration, Presets, Quantize. And you want to make sure that for the quantize that you have overdub quantized. You want to have loop, off, and loop. And then on the general tab, just to the left, you want it to set it to 6, 4, 8, 1. On the sustain tab, like before, just move all of them over from here to the left and then search through this list. And using the one arrow while clicking on, let's say if this was overdub, you click this and move overdub to the right. And then now in the functions box, you want to make sure that this box here is clicked for overdub while rounding. And you want to make sure that your multiply mode is normal, shuffle mode is reverse, mute mode is pause, mute cancel edits, and the rest of these leave them unchanged. And then hit OK. And then next you can set up the configuration to change the colors on here for your palette. The things that you're going to run into on here, if you want to adjust the colors of it, is button. And button is this color here that you see for these things. And then you will see button text, which is this. And this will be the pink dialog box that you see around that. That is the button text. And your record meter is going to be red on here. That's when you're recording, it'll be red. And the meter, it'll be green when it's playing back. So now with these configurations, MOBIUS is going to function as a standalone looper, but we're wanting to be putting it into Reaper for additional functionality and being able to take advantage of controlling the sample rate, as well as putting minor effects on the input channel to help with a bit of noise reduction, or even just a little bit of over-the-top compression to help with the input. Ideally, you want your signal going into Reaper to be as balanced and controlled for the top of it in the dynamics so that you don't loop an overloaded sound into the looper and have a bad performance. If you can afford external noise handlers or compressors to clean and control the sound, then spring for it, as well as a decent power conditioning to get your noise floor as low as you can. But for now, we're going to focus on setting up Reaper to handle the porting of MOBIUS. So the next thing that we want to do is you want to download Reaper. You're going to download Reaper from reaper.fm/download.php. Now, they will give you options down here for the different types of platforms that you want to use. So before opening Reaper, you're going to want to connect your audio interface. And that will simply be done by plugging in the USB cable that comes with the interface to the back of the interface, and then plugging that into your laptop or your PC, depending on what you're using. Once you have it installed, you're going to have Reaper be a blank screen. And this is going to be your blank screen that will look like this. In the bottom part of the window, you can double click in the blank area until you have 10 new tracks, or you can press Ctrl+T at the same time 10 times and get 10 tracks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There we go. We have 10 tracks on the screen just like that. It might throw you some errors about ASIO device, but don't worry about those. We're not going to deal with that at the moment. Now, starting with the first track, we're going to rename each one of them. And to do this, you're going to double click just above the light gray numbered box right here. and I'm going to set it to all caps because I like looking at it that way. And you're going to rename the tracks as follows. Input, and to move to the next one, just hit tab. Next one will be called MOBIUS. Move to the right, track 1, track 2, and I'm going to save myself just a little bit of typing here and copy that so that when I go to the next one it's just fine. Track 3, paste it, track 4, paste it, track 5, paste it, track 6, tab over, paste it, track 7, tab over, paste it, track 8. Now we have named each of the tracks on here. So now we need to configure the channel routing, which is located at the button that has the sea green slash on it. I'm going to additionally attach a project file that hopefully should have all of these automatically configured, but if you have issues, this is the hard way to do everything. Under the vertical tracks for MOBIUS on the routing, you're going to just grab a hold of track input and drag it into MOBIUS. So now that has changed. That yellow means that it's sending out to something, and the far right blue one means that it's receiving. So now the control for track input, you'll have that little dialog box that pops up. Cool. Now you're going to want to close that. You don't need to adjust anything, you just close it. Now we left click on the MOBIUS box and you'll see this dialog pop up. Bring it up to the top and we're going to uncheck the master send channels from 2, set our track channels to 16. So that's going to elongate MOBIUS, make it a little bit wider because it's going to see it as multiple lanes of audio traffic. And next thing you know, there's going to be a drop-down menu for the Add New Send, which is right here. And then we're going to click Add Sends to all tracks. And now, as you can see, we have sends coming out from MOBIUS to all the other tracks. But we're coming from input, so we are going to delete input. Now you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All of those coming through. And now here is another tedious thing that we're going to be doing again. We need to be fixing the track dispersal from MOBIUS on each of these. So it's telling which channels are coming out from MOBIUS. So for track 1, you want 1 and 2 for audio. Track 2, you want stereo source, 3 and 4. Track 3, stereo source, 5 and 6. Track 4, stereo source, 7 and 8. Track 5, stereo source, 9 and 10. Track 6, you want 11 and 12. Track 7, you want 13 and 14. Track 8, you want 15 and 16. So with the configuration done, you should have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And if those values don't show up on here, you're going to go new channel on sending track stereo source. And that will add a new channel. If that 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 aren't available, new channels on sending track. Now we'll click close. On the left hand side, if you scroll to the top, you'll see input. In the upper left corner, you're going to see the arm for record button, which is this guy. And you will right click it. And you're going to select input, stereo, input 1 and 2. Input stereo, not if input's available. We're going to set it to mono right now because that's just what we're set up as. Once you have more inputs, then you can mess with it there. Options. We're going to go to Options, Preferences, UMC. Device will pop up in the left-hand side here. UMC, ASIO driver. You're going to want to pick it from the ASIO list. Enable inputs 1 and 2. And click OK. And now, once you have that, you're going to left click on the button to arm it. And you're going to notice that there's audio coming into the signal now. The meter will have changed to orange. Now we want to make sure that we're not double sending audio to the master track. So what we're going to do is on this one here, click on that first one, and we're going to click the master send channels from to. So now we're not doubling up on the audio that's coming from the microphone itself. So there's going to be a little bit of a delay, but not that much. It shouldn't be too noticeable, but we're going to adjust that in settings here in a moment. In some cases, you're going to find that the audio from your source will only be from one speaker when set to this method. If you want to have it to come out of both speakers, you have to configure your input or utilize a mixer. To configure your input, you will need to right-click on the arm button again, and then set it up to input as stereo 1 and 2. But in this case, it's going to be left and right. But if you're using a mixer and you've got your mixer set up correctly, that mono channel of your microphone will now come out as a combined mono pair to render this as a full stereo. But until then, we're going to switch it back to just mono so that we're just using one. Next, you're going to need to set the front settings of your audio interface to look like this. Now, some exception is taken for the setting of the main, out, and phones levels, as those are going to be tailored to your taste, how you want them. Always make sure that you are not clipping on the interface input or the input within Reaper. MOBIUS does not detect or correct overloaded signals, so if crap goes in, crap shall be returned. Now we need to go through and assign the audio interface by going into Options, which is at the top here, down on the bottom to Preferences, and we're going to select Device, and then ASIO from the list over here is probably set to Windows originally, and then ASIO driver, which should be your UMC audio interface. You want your inputs to be 1 and 2, and you want your output range to be 1 through 4, because the back of the device contains 4 outputs that you can use creatively however you want. And then we're going to configure the ASIO of the actual device. We click here, and it will open up the UMC control panel. You're going to want to set your sample rate to 4100 Hertz and your buffer settings to 256 samples. If you have enough RAM, you should be fine running it with this low of samples. Make sure it's also set in safe mode. Otherwise, if you have glitching, raise the sample mode up just to 512. Any higher than that, and you're going to start developing too much recognizable latency between your performance and what's actually being recorded. And then close out of these boxes, hit OK. Next, we're going to go through and we're going to add MOBIUS to the actual interface itself from the digital audio workstation. You're going to look in here and you're going to type in MOBIUS, and it will bring up MOBIUS 2. Double click it, and now as you can see, MOBIUS opened for a second, which is fine. It's okay that it closed. Down in the lower right of the taskbar is where you're going to see this little Reaper logo that's blue. Never ever close this window. The one that says MOBIUS 2 times 86 bridged, never close this. Ever, ever, ever. It will freak out and you will need to restart your session. What you're going to want to do is only close the MOBIUS effects from here. This is where you want to close the MOBIUS effects from. Close that. Now, as you can see, this is your MOBIUS screen. Here's your MOBIUS standalone. We can close that. Here is your MOBIUS interface within Reaper. What we're going to do is click on this. We're going to bring it down in size. Be careful about closing this. If you close this on accident, this is the benefit of keeping the bridged thing open. You close this, oops, oh no. Click on this. Brings this back up. Here's MOBIUS again. Now what we're wanting to see is that it's functioning inside the program. Notice that this is selected onto track 1, and track 1 is taking audio in. Now, if we switch over to track 2, mind you, do not click on the names. That creates what's called focus lock, and it can create issues while doing live looping. Don't do these. Don't do these. Now, when you switch from track 1 to track 2, notice that the audio is jumping from the tracks over to each different track. Let's double check that these are set accordingly. So that means something is routed incorrectly. Go back to this. Now we are looking at track 3 should be 5 and 6. Track 4 should be 7 and 8. So something is set wrong in MOBIUS. We're going to find out the troubleshooting way. Let's go ahead and bring MOBIUS back up. Click on this. Now we'll go to our configuration. Let's check our track setups. Track 3 should be to plug in output port 3. Track 4 looks like it's sharing that one. So we'll need to go to 4. Double check 5, 6, 7, 8. So now that you've found out that there's the track switching, now this should jump to track 4, track 5, track 6, track 7, and track 8 down here in the bottom. And look, boom, back over to track 1, over to track 4. Kind of neat, right? So if you can see those changes happening, then the routing that you did is successful. If not, then you need to go back to the top to double check your settings to make sure they're right. So now, if your customized USB keyboard has not been plugged into the computer, this is the time to do it. Sometimes the audio interface likes to act weird when you do it. If you run into the issue where it tries to tell you that the audio device up here is closed, hit stop, and then hit play, and then hit stop again. And that'll tell it again that the audio interface is connected. That will figure it out for you instead of having to do a whole bunch of nonsense. Okay, so we've got the keyboard, and we've got the microphone, and we've got the guitar, and we've got MOBIUS set up on here. So let's see what we can do.